In the stillness of feudal Japan, where mist clung to the mountains and cherry blossoms scattered like whispers across temple courtyards, there lived a warrior class unlike any other. They were the samurai, men bound by honor, by loyalty, and by a code so unyielding that it shaped not only their lives but also the manner of their deaths. Among the many traditions that define these warriors, none is as haunting, as mysterious, or as tragic as the ritual of seppuku. Imagine the silence of a dimly lit chamber, incense drifting in the air, the soft rustle of silk garments, and a solemn audience watching as a warrior kneels before them, blade in hand. What would compel a man to end his own life with such calculated precision? To understand this, we must step into the world of the samurai, a world where death was not defeat but redemption, and where the ultimate sacrifice was an act of defiance and loyalty all at once. Seppuku, often called harakiri in the West, was far more than mere suicide. It was a ritual, deeply ingrained in the spiritual and cultural fabric of Japan, reserved for samurai who faced dishonor or who sought to prove their unwavering loyalty. This ritual was not born in haste, but cultivated over centuries, emerging from a philosophy that saw the sword not only as a weapon, but as an extension of the warrior's soul. The blade that defended could also purify, and in the moment of seppuku, it served as both executioner and redeemer. The origins of this practice stretch back to the 12th century, a time when Japan was fractured by warlords and shifting alliances, where loyalty could mean the difference between glory and ruin. A samurai who failed in his duty, who disobeyed his master, or who suffered defeat in battle, could restore his honor through this final, irreversible act. Picture the scene. The samurai prepares himself, often dressed in pure white robes, a symbol of purity and readiness for the afterlife. Before him rests a short blade, a tanto or wakizashi, polished to a gleam. Witnesses sit in respectful silence, for this is not chaos, but ceremony. The warrior composes a final poem, a death verse, encapsulating his thoughts at the threshold, between life and death. The words, often simple yet profound, linger in the air as he places the blade before him. With a calm hand, he takes the weapon, and in a movement as deliberate as it is devastating, plunges it into his own abdomen, slicing across in a gesture that tears the body but frees the spirit. The agony is unimaginable, yet the courage it demanded was seen as the ultimate proof of honor. But the ritual did not end there. To prevent prolonged suffering, a second, a trusted companion known as the kaishakunin, stood at the ready. With a swift stroke of the katana, the second would sever the samurai's head, granting him mercy while ensuring the dignity of the ceremony was preserved. Even in death, the samurai was not alone. His final moment was shared with his comrades, his lord, and the witnesses who bore testament to his loyalty. This balance between suffering and mercy gave seppuku its haunting beauty, a death that was brutal yet dignified, horrific yet noble. Throughout history, countless samurai chose this path, and their stories echo through the centuries. Some performed seppuku after losing in battle, refusing to be captured by their enemies. Others did it as a form of protest, to express their loyalty to a lord who had been wronged, or to resist injustice. One of the most famous tales is that of the 47 ronin, masterless samurai who avenged their lord's death against the strict laws of the shogunate. After achieving their mission, they willingly submitted to the punishment of seppuku, their loyalty immortalized in legend. Their graves still draw visitors today who leave offerings and bow their heads in reverence to men who chose death over dishonor. But beyond these legends lies the deeper question. Why was such a cruel act revered as noble? To the samurai, life was not the highest value, honor was. In a society governed by Bushido, the way of the warrior, courage, loyalty, and integrity defined a man's worth. Death was not to be feared, but embraced if it meant preserving one's name or serving one's master. Seppuku was both punishment and purification, ensuring that a warrior's shame did not stain his family or his clan. In this way, it was less about the individual and more about the collective, about duty and legacy. The act, Horrifying as it may seem to us today, was a final gift, a statement that one's loyalty was eternal. The ritual evolved over time, acquiring layers of symbolism. In earlier centuries, the act was raw and direct, performed on the battlefield or in the privacy of a home. By the Edo period, it became more codified, with strict procedures, formal attire, and even government oversight. Samurai of high rank were often granted the honor of seppuku rather than execution by other means, a privilege that preserved their dignity even in disgrace. The presence of witnesses transformed it into a public affirmation of loyalty, a message that one's death could speak as loudly as one's life. Yet, as the centuries passed, the world began to change. Western influence crept into Japan, modernization swept across the land, and the old codes of the samurai faced extinction. With the Meiji Restoration in the 19th century, seppuku was officially abolished as a legal practice. Still, the spirit of the ritual lingered. Even into the 20th century, echoes of seppuku surfaced, most famously in the case of Yukio Mishima, a celebrated writer who, in 1970, staged a dramatic return to the samurai tradition. After delivering a fiery speech about the loss of Japan's warrior spirit, Mishima performed seppuku in front of his followers, an act that stunned the modern world, but carried with it the weight of centuries of tradition. To outsiders, seppuku appears brutal, even barbaric, but to those within the samurai culture, it was a statement of ultimate control. A man taking his fate into his own hands, choosing death rather than subjugation, speaking his loyalty not with words, but with his very life. It was a ritual that blurred the line between devotion and destruction, reminding us that the human pursuit of honor can lead us to extraordinary and sometimes tragic ends. Even now, the story of seppuku haunts us because it speaks to something universal. We may not share the samurai's code, but we understand the weight of loyalty, the fear of dishonor, and the desire to leave this world with dignity. In the silence of that ritual chamber, in the flicker of candlelight and the steel of the blade, lies a truth about humanity itself, that we are willing to suffer, even to die, for the values we hold above all else. And so, when we hear of seppuku, we are not only hearing of an ancient practice, but also of a philosophy, a testament to the extremes of human devotion. It forces us to confront unsettling questions. What would we die for? What values are worth our very lives? The samurai answered those questions with steel, with blood, and with silence. Their world has faded, their castles turned to ruins, their swords resting behind glass in museums. Yet the echo of their final acts remains, whispering through the centuries, reminding us that in a time not so distant, honor was sharper than any blade, and death was not the end, but the final act of loyalty. The image of the samurai kneeling before his blade, calm yet resolute, remains etched in our collective imagination. It is at once horrifying and awe-inspiring, a paradox that makes seppuku so unforgettable. For in that moment, as life slips away, the samurai transcends the fear of death and becomes part of something greater than himself, his family, his clan, his code, his history. That is why the story of seppuku endures, not merely as a relic of the past, but as a symbol of humanity's eternal struggle to balance duty with desire, honor with survival, and life with death. So when we think of the samurai and their ritual of seppuku, we are not simply recalling an ancient act of violence. We are glimpsing a window into a culture that valued loyalty above all, a reminder that the human spirit, in its pursuit of meaning, can create rituals both beautiful and terrifying. It is a story that compels us to reflect, not only on their world, but on our own, on the values we live by and the legacies we leave behind. For the samurai, death was not the end. It was the final poem, the last battle, the closing chapter of a life lived with unwavering devotion. And that is why, even centuries later, the ritual of seppuku remains one of the most haunting traditions in human history.